March 12th, marks 50 years since the Velvet Underground came out with their first debut album, The Velvet Underground and Nico. 50 years, that's insane. I mean, this album is so influential. It's influenced so many different artists. It really took rock into dark, new, and interesting places. I mean, it's probably one of the most important albums of all time. And I've never listened to it. Hi, I'm Arthur, and this is Chapter Select. And this is a new video series I am calling First Listen Reviews, where an audio music noob listens to very, very famous albums and gives you a taste of what I think. Anyway, let's get started right away with the 1967 debut album from the Velvet Underground, The Velvet Underground and Nico. So first, I'm going to start out by telling you everything I know about the Velvet Underground and Nico. First of all, Banana. Second of all, I do know that this band recorded for a very short period of time, from 1967 to, I believe, like the very, very early 70s, like 1970, 1971. And the lineup kept changing, but I know that this band is very important because it's Lou Reed's band, and Lou Reed is famous for reasons. I know that this band was definitely the pet musical project of Andy Warhol, very famous pop artist from the 20th century. This album, when it first came out, was not very popular. I think it sold only like 33,000 copies, and it was like a critical flop. But since then, obviously, through underground music sharing and everything, it has blown up and is now one of the most famous albums of all time. The Velvet Underground and Nico is known for pushing a really dark sound and revealing a lot of the seedy, dark underbelly of New York City at the time. You have to remember that this album is coming out at the same time as albums like Revolver and Sgt. Pepper's and whatever the Rolling Stones were coming out with that year. I don't know years. Many other bands were influenced by this album. Bands like Pink Floyd and even more recently the Arctic Monkeys. I also know that Nico is a Swedish singer. That's probably really dumb if that's not right. She lends her voice to a few of the tracks here. Femme Fatale I've listened to. I've listened to Sunday Morning in Femme Fatale. I know that there's a song called Heroin on here. I know that this album was very influenced by heroin. I know that band members would be continually influenced by heroin. Anyway, that's all I got on the Velvet Underground before listening, so I'm gonna go back, listen to the album a few times, and let you know what I think. Okay then. So, I think that this banana is gonna be bruised. Let's peel slowly and see. It is bruised. So, the Velvet Underground and Nico. What were my thoughts? Well, who wants to shoot up some heroin now? God. So, this album has this really interesting connective tissue to it, which really comes from these backing instrumentation that really backs all the tracks. There's no point in the album's tracks, really, that there is no sound. You know, there's always something looming in the background. And I found that really interesting for the most part, except for on the song Sunday Morning. Sunday Morning is the track that opens the album, and it's probably my favorite track out of all of them. I just really, really love the instrumentation that he's used. It sounds like this music box, but it is a very kind of depressing sentiment. I mean, the song really is kind of depressing, right? Like, he's like, oh man, watch out, the world's behind you. You didn't do anything with your life. And it's just a gem of a song, really. Next is another favorite of mine, which is I'm Waiting for My Man. I can only deduce that this track is about waiting for your drug dealer to come by and deal with you. And so he's going, and it follows his whole journey to his drug dealer's house, I guess? He says he's got $26 in his hand, which prompted me to do a very embarrassing Google search of how much does heroin cost? And wow, he got a good deal. At least maybe in the late 60s, heroin was like really on the cheap, because now apparently, according to this website, heroin costs at least $110 a gram. And hopefully I can never back that up with hard evidence. It feels really down and dirty, and people are judging him for going to see the man. He's like, ah man, we know why this guy's walking down this street. Like, come on, he's a junkie. The only reason you're walking down the street is because you're getting drugs. Next song is Femme Fatale, which is sung by Nico. I enjoy Nico's voice on this song and I'll Be Your Mirror. I did not enjoy All Tomorrow's Parties. And it does kind of tell a simplistic story of the femme fatale. I'm not sure if he's saying that she's a prostitute. She's not, but then we get Venus in Furs, which is definitely weird. This song is about S&M, written before 50 Shades of Grey. Apparently Venus in Furs is a novella about S&M. I like the use of violin on this song. I think that's really interesting, but this song is just dark. Lou Reed admits on this song that he's kind of just bored. He's bored with life, and he's bored with what's happening, and he's on drugs, but yet he feels like he wants something more. He needs something more, so give it to him. The next song that I really actually did enjoy is Run, 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 which is it's a story about 4 different characters that are all drug addicts and are all dealing with wanting to get high on heroin, but then also not wanting to die. The struggle is real. And I think it's interesting that, on all these songs, Lou Reed talks about heroin, but never necessarily condemns it, but hopes to show you that heroin is not the way. Then we get All Tomorrow's Parties, and this is probably my least favorite song on the album. Nico's singing on it. There's this weird other second vocal in the background, which I'm pretty sure is just an overlay of her voice, that is really atonal. It sounds weird. This song just in general. It's about like getting dressed for tomorrow's parties, putting on a disguise, and making sure that it's a different disguise every night, trying not to be who you actually are. And I think that Nico's songs, as far as they do kind of delve into like this seedy underbelly, but they're really more about the internal appearance and internal thoughts about going out and doing the things that you're doing. Then we get possibly my favorite song on the album, which is Heroin. This song is just so crazy. The song starts out slow and prodding and stuff, talking about heroin, and then there's this point where he's like shooting up and he starts speeding up and his heartbeat starts speeding up and he starts talking like crazy, and he does not know where he's going. He does not know what he's doing. I'm not gonna attempt to know what it's like to be on heroin. I hope you don't think I would. But I think that this song does capture something real. It is kind of that cinema verite, fly on the wall, like this is how you feel. I'm not necessarily saying go do it, but I'm also not necessarily saying don't do it, which is kind of not good. And I like that drum in the background, he acts kind of like a heartbeat, and it speeds up and it speeds up. Then we also get There She Goes Again, which is pretty blatantly about prostitution. It's talking about dark subject matter and this feeling that like, oh man, this girl's gonna go romance other guys, like, slap her, you don't like that. It's just so dark. Then we got Black Angel's Death Song. Speaking of creepy. Then we got European Sun. European Sun has the shortest amount of lyrics. And from what I saw online, it's apparently about a classmate of Lou Reed's in Syracuse University. Apparently, he did not like rock music. So Lou Reed just sang this song as a plea to him, possibly? That's what the sources were saying online. Anyway, this song I get, but I didn't enjoy listening to. It's got a very interesting guitar solo, and there's great guitar solos throughout this entire album. There's this weird moment where chairs scraped across the floor and plates were thrown on the ground. There's just a lot of sound. There's a lot of noise. And I have to say, it was interesting, but I didn't hate it. So overall, I would say that the album, I enjoyed it. 50 years ago, this stuff was coming out. Like, this is definitely very progressive when I think of the time period it was coming from. I wouldn't say it's necessarily for me, but I do appreciate it as an art piece, and I appreciate it from the Andy Warhol aspect. Andy Warhol is kind of taking the idea of celebrity, but this sort of thing is kind of playing with the idea, at least in my mind, of rock and roll, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and taking it to the extreme of extremes, like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Like, it is dark. It is not Elvis Presley anymore. It is the Velvet Underground. But I also think it's really interesting how simplistic this album is. If you look at music today, it's not that. My favorite song probably is Sunday Morning. Also really like Heroin. surprisingly, that is probably going to come back to haunt me, that audio clip. People are going to take that and say, I really liked Heroin. Least favorite song is probably All Tomorrow's Parties. Either that or European Sun. Anyway, overall, I did enjoy the Velvet Underground and Nico. But if you've never listened to the Velvet Underground and Nico, I say give it a shot and let me know what you think down below. Also, if you have listened to the Velvet Underground and Nico, comment down below and let me know what you think of the album and if you think that my opinions are stupid or not. I definitely see how influential it is, but it's not my favorite album ever. If you agree, if you disagree, just let me know down below. Anyway, I'm Arthur, this has been First Listen, and you can listen to another review right now. Anyway, I'm Arthur, this has been First Listen Reviews, and you can select another chapter right now. Oh, shoot.